brother, 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 brother.
And that is the last one you'll ever hear of those for 2022. So thank you to Angelo for the great brother. As we begin to look back at Impact Wrestling in 2022. If you're new here, this is the Deep Six Wrestling Podcast. I don't know how you found us, but you're here. And as I just stated, we are going to be looking back at Impact Wrestling's year of 2022, a pretty big year for the company. When you look at just everything that they did, new signings, big storylines, working relationships with other companies, and just putting on a quality show anytime that they went out and did it, whether that's for TV or for their Impact Plus specials or for their pay-per-views. I feel like most people would agree that this was a pretty good year overall for the company in terms of the wrestling that they delivered. So just to get introductions out of the way, I haven't been on an Impact podcast in I don't know how long, but I'm Pat, and I'm joined by the two normal people that talk about Impact Wrestling for the Deep Six Wrestling Podcast when we do shows, and that is Ryan and Angelo. Yep, there's Ryan. Okay.
Hi.
And then Angelo, who you heard before.
Brother.
And so do you guys want to just go over your brief thoughts about the year that Impact had? You know, you started this podcast back in did you start in 2020
baby?
Yeah, 2020. So it's been 2 years of talking about Impact. So I'll just let you guys have a little conversation here to kick things off about what you thought of this year for Impact.
Right. So I think it's interesting that you bring up, like, we started in 2020 and we originally did it just as I did it, as I was like, I'm kind of burnt out from pandemic era wrestling. That was at the beginning of the pandemic. I was like, NXT was absolute dog shit, and AEW was not performing its best. And I was like, well, I still want to watch wrestling. I don't have much to do because the pandemic, and was like, Angelo, I know you liked Impact at a time. Let's do Impact reviews just for shits and giggles. And Angelo was like, yeah, I'm down. And we did in the lead up to Slammiversary, I believe.
Yeah, and a lot of that was because there was heavy speculation on guys and girls released from WWE after those April 2020 cuts. That who's gonna come to Slammiversary, who's gonna sign, and we got a couple names out of it at the time. But that was kind of like why we jumped into it, because of the speculation of what was going to happen at the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
They Impact was going nuts and teasing like Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe and stuff, like things way out of their realm. But we still got some cool surprises like Eric Young.
Yeah, I mean, we got, just from thinking about the 2020 releases, we got the Good Brothers, which was easily the biggest one, I think. We had Deonna Purrazzo, who I think became the biggest star that they actually had.
Definitely like the biggest net positive.
Yeah. You had Eric Young surprising everybody, showing up in the main event for a title shot. And throughout the next year or so, there'd be other people being plugged and played as releases happened again and again. And just seeing how Impact went from, how they handled the pandemic. I think they had some good matches, but as me and Angelo point out, originally they just went with no crowd noise, no fake crowd noise, nothing. And that was a little offsetting. Then they went with the cafeteria noise, as we called it.
Cafeteria noise era was great.
That made it a little better. Then there were some random matches that they'd have, like, wrestlers around ringside. I think there's like 1 or 2 of those. And they just bang on the mats or bang on the sides, and I think that was worse than the cafeteria noise. And then we finally started to get fans back last year, and then I think once the fans came back and they started touring again, they just hit like another level of just trying their best to put out the best product forward. There's been a few bumps in the road with some storylines, especially towards the end of 2022, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But overall, I think Impact has been probably the big surprise for me that I like hooked onto it so much. I didn't think it was going to become my number one promotion to follow, and yeah,
it's by far and away our number one promotion we follow now.
Yeah.
I'll do a brief, my Impact journey. I'll briefly explain. So, I watched from the Spike TV era when it was TNA wrestling, from maybe like 2006 to 2012. So I was really into the product when I was younger. Then, life happens. I started college, so I didn't have as much time to keep up with the product. And also, I had no idea what channel it was on for a while. But then Ryan and I got back into it 2020. There's still some of the history there. And like you said, the Slammiversary 2020 was exciting because the idea of they're bringing back some of the old names. And we got to end up seeing Eric Young, which I was excited about. And they were teasing some other ones that clearly didn't make sense. But we also got the return of Motor City Machine Guns at the time, a tag team I really liked when I was younger. So there was a lot of play back into that. And Impact in 2022, being the 20th anniversary of, Impact, they did play a little bit into it, and it was tasteful. They didn't try to bring back too many old heads except for what happened in October, and we'll talk about that. But for the most part, I think, one of the things we'll want to focus on is the Slammiversary main event, Eric Young versus Josh Alexander, where that kind of was like a culmination of this is what Impact is, and what Impact was and what Impact is trying to do now. And they have plenty of workhorses in the company right now that are putting on great performances week in, week out. So definitely excited to be part of the Impact journey still, now later on in my life, post Spike TV era. So glad to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there you go. And my coming to Impact is watching because you guys were watching, and then briefly watching because of work. I was covering Impact Weekly for the Sportster, everybody's favorite website, and then those reviews weren't getting enough views from you hardcore Impact fans, so you guys fucked me, and that got canceled. So now I do reviews for all of the Impact Plus shows and pay-per-views because for some reason you tune into that, but you don't tune into weekly write-ups for the show. So to all of you hardcore Impact fans, I just want to say one thing: go fuck yourself.
Whoa.
Anyways,
we got a kidney here.
Anyways, we're going to dive on in, and we're going to go through 2022 from start to finish for the next 24 hours.
We're just going to re-review every episode.
Yeah. This is going to take a couple weeks. So just, sit back, relax, and, call out of work.
I got my coffee pot going.
Yeah, I have coffee injected into my fucking veins. So we're not going to go through every episode of Impact. I have a bunch of big matches and big shows listed out here, and we're going to talk about that. And then in between, I'm going to ask you guys some questions as we go through the year. So beginning the year, because Impact does a pay-per-view basically to start the year, similar to how New Japan has Wrestle Kingdom, Impact has Hard to Kill, which they will be. That is the first pay-per-view of 2023 on January 13th, I believe.
It is Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Because Impact now does their shows on Fridays.
Yeah, so that's your first pay-per-view coming up into 2023, but it was also the first pay-per-view of 2022. And some big stuff on the show when you look back in hindsight. You had, on the pre-show, of all places, you had Mike Bailey making his Impact debut, where he would take part in a four-way match in the X Division with Ace Austin, Chris Bay, and Laredo Kid, and Mike Bailey would pin Ace Austin, which would set up a storyline between those two for the next couple months. We have your guy, probably your feud of the year. The Inspiration versus the Influence was supposed to take place at Hard to Kill for the Knockouts tag team titles, but it would be the first of several delays of this match, as this would not happen on the pay-per-view due to somebody getting COVID. It was canceled because the Inspiration came into contact with someone with COVID.
Yes.
But they did not test positive, but this was delayed. And then you had your two big title matches on the show, which was Moose versus Matt Cardona versus W. Morrissey for the Impact World Championship. And in the main event, Deonna Purrazzo versus Mickie James for the Knockouts Championship in a Texas Deathmatch. And the big thing about this match was the story ahead of it, as just basically right before this, it was announced that Mickie James would be entering the Royal Rumble match. And obviously the question was, are they going to have the Knockouts champion go into the Rumble? Or
the first question was why?
Your first question was why, and I do have a question that is the first question I do have listed here, for this little podcast that we're doing. Is a year removed from this. Do you have any thoughts on Mickie James entering the Royal Rumble as Knockouts champion? Do you think it was worthwhile? Do you think it added anything?
I'll start with that.
Okay, go for it.
I think that if we remember correctly, and maybe I'm not remembering correctly or not, but I believe it got like a few, like it boosted the numbers a little bit, not too much, but like people were like, oh, she's in the Royal Rumble, like that's cool.
Boosted the numbers which way?
Like to Impact, like people like were like, oh, like I'll watch this, but it wasn't sustained or anything like that.
The big thing was that she came out in the Rumble with
the
Knockouts
Championship. They didn't refer to it as the Knockouts Championship. They referred to it as the Impact Women's title because, knockouts, what's a knockout?
Yeah, but
what is Impact Wrestling?
But she also came out with Hardcore Country.
Yeah,
it was something we saw with Cody in WWE where he basically had his presentation lifted from AEW and it was just dropped in.
And I think that was very unique. I think
it was unique because Mickie was first, so we really had no idea how they were going to approach it.
Yeah, and I mean, we had our thoughts. I believe if we go back to it, we were like, okay, maybe she gets like a few eliminations, or maybe she's gonna go in there and just get tossed out real quick. And hopefully, we hoped that she'd like have a decent run. I feel like she was in the. I feel like she was in there for a few minutes.
She was in. So I know this because I actually just wrote about this.
Right. All I know is that she got eliminated by somebody who didn't boost any. It didn't boost
Lita,
somebody's.
Right?
Yeah.
She was in for approximately 11 minutes.
Okay.
She got one elimination. I believe it was Michelle McCool, who was in the match for like 30 minutes, I think. And then Lita tossed out Mickie James.
Okay. It didn't boost I mean, Lita got like a return match and like a title match, I believe. Was it Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, she wrestled Becky Lynch in Saudi Arabia.
So like it made sense that like Lita was getting like a send off in WWE again. But at the same time, nobody knew that at the time. It just seemed like, oh, a legend eliminated a legend and was eliminated by another legend.
I mean, I thought that was a net neutral.
Yeah, and I think that's about exactly what it was. I think people looked into it way too much, with people being, especially the hardcore Impact fans on Reddit and Twitter, thinking that this is the start of a working relationship. We're going to start seeing WWE people coming on Impact shows. And more Impact people showing up in WWE. We're gonna get Moose versus Roman Reigns, or Moose is gonna be in the Royal Rumble too now that he's champion. And none of that stuff happened. The closest thing we got to a WWE person showing up in Impact was AJ Styles cutting a video package for Slammiversary. To talk about his
WWE for letting him do that.
Yes.
Promo.
Yeah. I think we talked about it and we thought, oh, maybe this is gonna be a way that like we get AJ Styles or like somebody from WWE that was in Impact to get like put in the Hall of Fame for Impact. That didn't happen. It feels like it was, as Angelo said, a net neutral situation.
Yeah. I'll try not to add too much. Pat, you can cut me off, but the speculation of it was more fun than the actuality. I think that's kind of how a lot of things in wrestling are. But because Mickie James in the match, he didn't really move the needle either way. And realistically, that wasn't going to happen. She's signed to Impact. Hearing now that it was more of Vince McMahon just didn't want to use NXT talent as much as he was like, let's just get some of the, let's get Summer Rae back. That's a good idea. So I think that's kind of how Mickie James' name came up. Maybe he forgot she was fired.
Yeah. He forgot he fired her.
Right. Well, he doesn't, personally call the people and say you're fired. Like,
oh, you're telling me that
he might have just been like, oh, that Mickie James girl, can you get her for the match? And they're like, sir, he's she's in a different company. Anyway, like I said, I think a net neutral. It led to, some interesting stuff on Impact Television in the sense that, oh wow, she's going to the big leagues again, kind of that feel. Led to what at the mid-year time I said was the worst promo in wrestling at the time, was the State of the Address that Mickie James gave to the women's locker room, because it was just kind of weird, because she wasn't going to win the Battle Royale or the Royal Rumble match. It really didn't mean anything, and then it kind of led to just some weird interactions in the ring. And with Chelsea Green, I think, involved.
Yeah.
So I didn't enjoy that. But yeah, I thought it was like net neutral, bigger than it should have been. But good for Mickie James, I guess.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to say and add before we go any further is if you ask about anything else from Hard to Kill, I'm not going to be much of a help because I've only seen highlights because I still have not watched that show.
No, that was basically that was the only thing I was going to ask. Again, I was just mentioning what was on the card, the big things, obviously.
No, and in the year in whole, like Mickie James being at the Royal Rumble was a big moment for
Yes.
That.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And again, the fact that she did the Texas Deathmatch and then went into the Royal Rumble, starts a big year, and again, there would end up finishing the year kind of also en route to a big thing as well. So
yeah.
The next question I would go to is mainly because you had in your main event scene for that pay-per-view, you had Matt Cardona and W. Morrissey there. Because I feel like all three of us agreed that W. Morrissey ended up becoming quite a good wrestler during his time in Impact. My next question was going to be, looking at the company in 2022, who would you each choose if you were looking at just somebody on the roster? Who do you think was like the most improved from years past? And it doesn't have to be like from 2021 to 2022, but like again, a W. Morrissey, everybody knows him as Big Cass, and I feel like 2022 was a pretty big year for him, kind of shedding that and showing that he's more than just some comedy guy.
Yeah, now he's Big Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just jump on and say, right now I can't really think of anyone outside of W. Morrissey because of that. He was very one-dimensional in WWE, and then he floundered as soon as Enzo was released. So he didn't really get like a good, partially because of injury. Like he wasn't really able to like thrive as a singles wrestler outside of like a short feud with Daniel Bryan. And obviously he battled some personal demons as well. He documented, but he really was able to build his character like full well-rounded. He was still a heel at the time in the beginning of 2022, and then he kind of became that fan favorite, throwing people through tables. Specifically Brian Myers' table over and over again. So he had a lot of character development. Obviously, while it didn't necessarily, benefit Impact full year round, I mean, it benefited W. Morrissey because look, he got the big money deal now at AEW.
Yeah, 100%. Ryan, is there anybody that jumps out to you from the roster right now that you would say is the most improved for you?
Yeah, I think there's two people that I would go with. One of them I think is probably a little bit, you could say, was more presentation wise, more of a breakout person, and that would be Black Taurus. I think that he went from being, the side guy in Decay that was just like the monster Hoss guy, even though he's not really, he's just like a big X Division guy, like a big as in muscular man. But I think that as the year went on, he got more crowd interactions. He looked like he could have been going and getting an X Division win, getting a title. That didn't happen. But I think the crowd got extremely behind him, just based off of, his matches with Laredo Kid on BT. Like he went from being a BTI regular to being like a crowd favorite. And I think that speaks volumes about, the performer that Black Taurus is. And it helps that Decay, for some reason, seems to be a crowd favorite group. I've never connected with them, but I connect with Black Taurus every time he's out there. The other one I would say is Jordynne Grace. I think that 2022 went from her being just like the strong woman in the Knockouts division to an all-around like great match performer. I think she had numerous really, really strong outings on TV and on pay-per-view. And I don't know if either of them would make a jump anywhere. I can't see either of them doing that at this point in their careers. Just because, I don't know what the limit. I think the limit for Black Taurus at this point in time is X Division guy or a tag team guy with I hopefully not Crazy Steve, because I do not care about that tag team whatsoever. But he's in a tag team in AAA. I feel like, is it him and Laredo Kid? I feel like it is him and Laredo Kid.
I
were
don't
a tag
watch.
team.
I don't watch AAA, buddy. I don't know.
Okay, but yeah, I feel like that Black Taurus is building up steam. Maybe gets an X Division win this year. Who knows? And Jordynne Grace, I think she'll probably lose her Knockouts title, but I don't think she's going anywhere, at least anytime soon.
No,
that makes sense.
And I would assume, with Jonathan Gresham signing with Impact, I think it's pretty safe to say she's staying put.
Yeah,
that's fair. I guess I should add two names really briefly. I mean, you gave us a softball mentioning Mike Bailey already, but in terms of impressed, he wasn't there in Impact in 2021. So obviously we know the great year he's had. The other name too, Steve Macklin. I think he kind of hit a little bit of a rut, but not necessarily his fault. It just doesn't seem like there's a storyline falling in his place currently. But he kind of ascended tremendously from that end of 2021 to mid-year 2022. Getting that, quote unquote win over Jay White, and just other things like really elevating him to be like he really deserves the world title shot, and building his character fully now. He's there. He's like kind of just like on the shelf waiting for a really good, storyline to break out for him. But he's impressed us in the sense of Ryan and I really didn't like him at first when he was signed by Impact. Like, what is he going to do? Just beat up X Division guys? That's cool. I guess he's just bigger than them. But now he's a really contributing member of the roster. So
yeah, I think Macklin definitely should be up there, and we'll talk more about him later because by the time we get to Rebellion, he ended up starting to launch up the card.
Right.
And would eventually have his momentum cut out by the greatest return of the year for Impact. But we'll get there. No Surrender would be up next, which saw two big things, and they were not really too related to Impact, but Jay White would wrestle a major singles match against Eric Young on the show. A very strong match. And then later in the night, the Good Brothers would face off against the Gorillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, for the Impact World Tag Team titles. And this would be a big New Japan development as Jay White would turn on the Gorillas of Destiny, laying out Tama Tonga with a Blade Runner and assisting the Good Brothers to retain the titles, which would then lead to Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows rejoining Bullet Club as the Gorillas of Destiny, longtime members of the faction, were kicked out. And again, a very big development that could have happened on New Japan soil on a New Japan show, but instead happened in Impact. So, a big moment for that working relationship between these two.
Yeah, I mean, overall, especially with that, there really hasn't been like a U.S. presence of Bullet Club necessarily. People obviously know Finn Balor was in Bullet Club, AJ Styles was in Bullet Club, the Good Brothers were in Bullet Club, but there was never really got to see it on screen in the U.S. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, no, 100%. The closest thing would have been any of the random New Japan shows that ran in America, but never again. The closest thing now is New Japan Strong, which is a show that's just on their streaming service. It's a pretty small show. It's not like a must-watch thing, but that's where you can go to see Bullet Club now in America is the New Japan Strong shows, which are just small tapings. But this was definitely the biggest deal. This I feel like when did this? I think the first time we would have seen Bullet Club on national television like this would have been probably a couple weeks beforehand when Jay White showed up at the AEW show that we went to in Atlantic City, Angelo.
Right. He was doing his U.S. tour full force.
Yeah. But then this was the first big storyline thing, and then obviously we get Forbidden Door later with AEW and New Japan that would see more of it. But again, this was a big thing for Impact that they would have, again, some of the original members of Bullet Club here like with Tama Tonga and Carl Anderson. Tama Tonga getting kicked out of the group after spending since joining in 2013, and then kicked out on an Impact show, a place that he doesn't even work.
Right. That's versus like AEW was like more of it's Bullet Club. And Impact's getting the storyline now. That was really cool.
Hey man, I'm just gonna say this real quick. You're both wrong. Jay White had appeared the year before.
Yeah.
I'm ignoring that because that was one of the worst angles that Impact probably has done in the last couple of years.
And again, it felt like it was going to lead to something, and it didn't lead.
It didn't. It went nowhere. It was Jay White showed up at the end of the pay-per-view, had a stare down with Kenny Omega. Then they cut to black and didn't show people what was actually happening. Where Juice Robinson and David Finlay were getting into it with Jay White and the Good Brothers, and then that went nowhere for Jay White.
That was more Jay White issues than Bullet Club issues, in my opinion.
Yeah. So ignoring that, this was a big deal for Impact. And again, if you're looking back at one big moment this year for the working relationship between Impact and New Japan, aside from Ace Austin and Chris Bay working in New Japan, this would be it with again a massive storyline taking place on No Surrender of all places, not even like a pay-per-view, like an Impact Plus show.
Right.
Yeah.
So, now I did mention the Good Brothers there. And that's going to lead me into my next question for you guys because I feel like most people are in agreement that the Good Brothers are rather underwhelming in most cases. So was there anybody on the Impact roster who you thought had a disappointing year, somebody that you thought would do better, or just underwhelmed you with their performances as a whole, whether they're with the company still or if they've left?
Tough. I mean, maybe Masha Slamovich. Just because of the post Bound for Glory, arc of hers, it kind of disappeared, and that's always the issue with when you have a hot undefeated streak, and then what do you do once they have their first loss? And she has not found their footing yet in that sense. So maybe I'll go with that. Even though obviously she's had a good 2022, getting all the exposure on Impact and being in other places, wrestling a bear for Zicky Dice's promotion. So she's had her fair share of successes, but I think I could say her Impact run has been a little disappointing because it just hasn't led to much.
Yeah, to that extent, they spent so much time building her up. And it seemed like you guys were on the train of thought that she was going to be the one to dethrone Jordynne, and then she lost the first time. Then they do a big stipulation match the second time that she could have won, but then they just ended up going with Jordynne to set up Jordynne as like the unbeatable girl who's just running through the division ahead of Mickie James. I think that's a fair reason for your logic.
It's like because she's getting less TV time now than Jessica and Tasha Steelz, and these are fine wrestlers too. But for the way they built up Masha all year and made her very important and protected her, it's deflating to not see too much result out of it now.
Yeah. Okay. Ryan, do you have anybody?
Yeah. I would go with a little bit Masha, just because I really enjoy her presence. And I thought her run towards the title was good. Her 2 matches for the title were very good. It's just, I mean, it happens every year where, at least since we've been watching, that like once that last pay-per-view or Impact Plus show ends in November, it feels like the rest, like December, is just like a wash. And I think it was more of a wash once they basically had set up all their matches, or all the major matches for Hard to Kill in January. So it's like, okay, well, all the feuds are already filled up for that show. Where does that leave the other people? And I think that's why we've been able to. It benefited the men's division, I think, because we've gotten to see some really good matches in December from the men's divisions.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I'm sure we'll talk about towards the end. But I'd go with Masha Slamovich. I'd also go with Deonna Purrazzo a little bit, just because she dropped off the fucking face of the earth. Once she lost her title to Mickie, she lost all her momentum, and then Taya Valkyrie came in, took her other title, and then she wasn't in the title scene. Unfortunately, in the women's division, in the knockouts division, if you're not in the title scene for that or the knockouts tag titles, you're not really getting too much TV time.
Right. It's hard
so
to find
her
your
and
footing outside of that.
yeah, her and Chelsea started a tag team, and I thought, okay, this is gonna be the start of something big. That they can bring back the prestige of the knockouts tag titles. Or at least build up the division, and then they immediately lost it. And Chelsea seems like she's gone from the company and going to WWE, and I feel like it's completely put Deonna in a position where it's like she went from the top star that they had, man or female, in their company at the beginning of the year to an afterthought, and I think that's wild. And I don't know if that it's very odd, her positioning, because there's the talk of is she leaving the company because her deal was reported to end in December. She's been announced for the shows in the TV taping in January, and then she's announced like indie dates all through March. So I think we can safely say she's not going to WWE with Chelsea because you wouldn't be announcing indie dates. But I don't know if she sticks around Impact, if she's gonna just be like on one of those handshake deals until they have nothing for her, or what. But
yeah, she seems pretty bitter against WWE. She might just kind of stick around, like in terms of like when something comes up, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this ages poorly, and she debuts in the Rumble.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so, the person who was a literal jobber for 3 years, basically, in WWE, debuts in the Rumble. She'll get massive reactions for that.
Well,
I mean,
people know who she is. I mean, wrestling fans know who she is.
She's again over the past 2 years or whatever. She's risen her stock and everything, and she would get a reaction 100%.
Yeah, some boomers might yell, "Who are you?" But
yeah.
I guess so quickly. Low hanging fruit, really, for most disappointing, I guess, is the inspiration.
Ooh,
yeah, that is true.
There was a whole tag division built for them, and then they left to do OnlyFans. So
yes,
I won't say any more than
that. that is fair.
Yeah. And speaking of them, at Sacrifice, which was the next Impact Plus show, again, so looking back at this, the beginning of January is when we were supposed to get the long-anticipated Impact Knockouts tag team match between the Influence and the Inspiration. It would not be until 2 months later, at March 5th's Sacrifice, that match would finally happen, as the Influence would defeat the Inspiration to become Knockouts tag team champions, and shortly after, the Inspiration would announce that they were retiring.
Mm-hmm.
I think truly the saddest part of it was that Caleb lost, his usefulness in the company.
Yeah, and then Caleb was gone.
Right,
and
right.
Because
he was a gem for those.
Yeah.
I mean, for end of 2021 into early 2022, he was truly a comedic gem.
Yeah. I think it's wild that's probably the longest feud the Knockouts tag division had since it's come back. Everybody from both those teams are gone from the company.
Yeah, Caleb's working AEW Dark. Madison Rain's a coach in AEW, and the Inspiration are retired, and Tennille is now Emma again.
Yeah.
So wild times.
Yeah.
The rest of that show would see Jay White versus Alex Shelley in a match that was Alex Shelley being because he was apparently something I never knew, that he was Jay White's mentor. So this was a battle of the teacher and the student. PCO versus Jonah was on this event, one of their matches. Tasha Steelz would defeat Mickie James to become Knockouts champion, and Violent by Design would defeat the Good Brothers to become Impact World Tag Team champions. So I guess the coming out of this, one of the questions would be, Tasha Steelz is Knockouts champion. Do you think she was the right person to dethrone Mickie? Or should it have been somebody else if you were looking at the roster at the time?
At the time, she was. I think she was definitely the most polished heel and besides Deonna at the moment, where like, okay, this made sense. Give her the belt. She, won in a screwy fashion, and she'll talk it up. So I thought it made sense.
Ryan?
I thought that it was a good decision, but I don't think it was the best decision. I still think that Chelsea should have been the one to take it off of her in a screwy fashion, because they kept on hyping up this match that we're going to get Chelsea versus Mickie, like the best friends. They were going to, Mickie kept on saying, oh, once I get the championship, I'm going to give you the first shot. And then Chelsea got injured, quote unquote, by Deonna. And then Chelsea was just like, oh, I was like, she turned heel in the easily one of the worst ways. I thought her whole heel arc with Mickie was atrocious. And I think it overshadowed Tasha's reign because the story went more about Chelsea and was about Chelsea and Mickie than Tasha beating Mickie in their rematch. That would happen. And
yeah, I mean, about that, it was Impact trying to double dip, basically.
Yeah,
like we have a world title, so that's one feud. A women's world title, that's one feud guaranteed. Let's spin off a secondary one, and that was their idea with Mickie James and Chelsea.
Yeah,
that was the execution, not great at all.
No.
But that was their idea. I mean, like, that reminds me of why John Cena in the whole latter half of his WWE career was not really having world title matches, because he'd get there, he'd get real close, and then something would happen, someone would screw him, and he'd have the spin-off feud, and then the world title would be on the side as well. Like, someone else would be fighting for that. So that's what they're Mickie James is that type of star power for the Impact Women's division. She it has enough credibility to her name that the idea was she could run a feud with Chelsea Green. It just was not executed very well.
Yeah. And I think that Tasha, I thought that she had pretty good matches. I don't think they were the best matches as champ. I think it showed that she was still a little green, and I think that's why some people would say that maybe it was too early for her title reign. But I think the Impact would redeem the title by the end of the year.
Okay. And now you did mention the way that Chelsea turned heel, and that'll transition to this next question, because just a few days after Sacrifice, you two would attend an Impact taping at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, and that was the show where Chelsea turned heel.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on attending Impact Live? You guys have both attended indie shows. We all saw Ring of Honor and House of Hardcore. We've been to AEW. We've been to WWE shows.
And I saw a TNA house show when I was younger.
Okay, and you saw a TNA house show. So there you go. So what were
your
thoughts
Angelo went to Hardcore Hustle.
Oh, fuck.
He did. There's a video of that.
There is. What were your thoughts on attending the Impact taping back in March? Would you go again? Was it fun? All that jazz.
I think yes. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, I would go again. It's weird to see a show that has a lot of backstage stuff that just doesn't show any of the backstage stuff. Because like AEW or WWE,
True.
if you go to a taping or an event and there's a backstage interview, or there's somebody's getting beaten down backstage, like they show that on the screens, but they don't do that for Impact.
I think I agree. That was the big negative of not having a Jumbotron. It was the backstage stuff.
You'd get to hear during one of the matches, there's a lull in the match, and all of a sudden you just heard banging in the back. So you knew they were taping stuff for these segments. But so that was a little bit weird. But yeah, I would go again. The crowd was really, I'd say, really hot for most of the show that was taped. We were feet away from Mr. Impact.
My guy.
We were feet away from the guy who had multiple Brooke Tessmacher full body towels.
True.
and yeah, it's definitely not as. Oh, and then we also had David Penzer just like forgetting like matches or like telling us this match is gonna happen, and then that match
he was
did
doing
not
the best
happen.
he could.
Yeah. Well, don't advertise a match to us and then it not happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I did enjoy myself at the tapings, but I think, I mean, the crowd was hot. It was a very enjoyable experience for 2 nights there. Might have more had to do with Philadelphia than it had to do with Impact fans, honestly.
Yeah.
Because watching some Impact shows, you're like, why do they film? Why do they go to Nashville? Like some places, the crowd is just rough.
Yeah.
Not so much in 2022. They maybe did a better job picking their places, but like Nashville stuck out to me. It's like they got to stop going there. No one cares about wrestling in that town, it seems like. But Philadelphia is a good crowd. They should come here more often. I would definitely be interested to go to a non-Philadelphia 2300 arena show. Obviously, we know the crowds are hot there, but I'd like to see it somewhere else just out of my curiosity. Yeah. I mean, it was a good show. It's not a grand production like, AEW and WWE are now, but that's the point of it. It's run like an indie show. It felt like an indie show. Being in Philly, you got to see Nunzio.
And Tony Mamaluke.
How could we forget?
Yeah.
So, it was a fun time.
Yeah, Pat's favorite member of the FBI.
Absolutely.
Also, just want to give a quick shout out to Scott D'Amore for lying to everybody's faces at that show by saying, "Hey, we're gonna be coming back in September for an Impact Plus show," and then not do that show in September in Philly.
That is true.
Yeah. So what? That would have been Victory Road. You would have gotten.
Yeah.
Okay.
Instead, I believe that was in Nashville, wasn't it?
Right.
I think so.
They must have a good deal there or something.
Yeah, they've got to go.
And I know Nashville just had the Ric Flair show, but even that crowd wasn't like super hot.
No, they were only really excited for the main event, which was abysmal.
Yeah, and there was plenty of good wrestling on the mid.
Oh, there was some fantastic wrestling. There was a great tag team match with the Wolves versus Motor City Machine Guns. There's a great lucha match on that card as well. But they all just decided to sit on their hands and knees.
Bruce had an excellent show in there.
Yeah. And then everybody just came to life for Ric Flair almost dying. So
and Jeff Jarrett working the crowd like a
because Jeff Jarrett's great. Because we love him.
Yeah.
All right. After this, we would go to a show that didn't have much big storyline stuff happening, but you would have a big cross promotional match with Tomohiro Ishii versus Eddie Edwards, who represented Pro Wrestling Noah. Chris Sabin defeats Jay White in a singles match, though New Japan would not recognize the loss ever, and they would continue to say that Jay White has been undefeated or unpinned in several months following this. So a match again, very strange that again they work together. So it was just kind of weird that they just completely ignored his loss to Chris Sabin. And it's not like Sabin doesn't wrestle for New Japan; he's currently a champion there. The Briscoes would debut for Impact as they would take on the Good Brothers in the main event. Just like an hour after having one of the best tag matches of the year against FTR at Supercard of Honor for Ring of Honor. And Taya Valkyrie would return to the company, challenging Deonna Purrazzo after a defense of her AAA Women's Championship. So just some random stuff that happened on that show, which was basically just their WrestleMania fun show. So
yeah, I mean, it highlights like all the talent that is in Impact and the talent that wants to work with Impact wrestlers.
Yeah, absolutely. There was also a match that I skipped over because there's other matches on the show, but a match that I feel like Ryan was going to mention because I hated it. The mixed tag match between Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green and Aldis, Nick Aldis and Mickie James.
Yeah, that's what I'm like when I refer to poor execution of the the spin-off storyline. That's exactly what I meant. They shouldn't have did the mixed tag match.
Yeah.
That was
the best part about that match was Nick Aldis not knowing the rules of the mixed tag match. Where like Matt Cardona, because it's Impact and you're allowed to do intergender stuff, and like he'd get like annoyed that Chelsea would be in the ring with him and like try to attack him, and so like he'd immediately try to tag out, or like he'd just walk off and be like, "Oh, does that not throw Mickie right in?" And this was a mess of a match.
Yeah, and it was I think it was just unfair to the storyline that Mickie and Joey had to just last second throw in Aldis and Cardona.
Yeah, 100%. I don't remember them ever bringing this match up ever again. So
no, I mean, to be fair, this show kind of just felt like a fever dream. They feel like it was just kind of there.
Well, other than
Right.
Taya Valkyrie challenging.
Yeah, that was the only thing that came out of this that was like canon.
And the Briscoes and Good Brothers match for
No,
later
Mickie
down
and
the
Chelsea
match.
feud. This was the blow-off match.
Yeah.
Then another one didn't happen for months. So.
That's true. That's true.
And then that would head into one of the bigger shows of the year. Hard to Kill is a big show, but I feel like the trio of Rebellion, Slammiversary, and Bound for Glory were all pretty big for Impact. I don't know why I completely forgot that this happened, but the Inspiration and Influence would have one more match. They did wrestle on this show as the Inspiration looked to get their tag team titles back. They lost, and then 4 days after this show, they announced their retirement.
Yeah, I was going to say they definitely didn't retire when you said they did because they were at the show that we were at.
Yeah, so that's a mistake on my part, but they did retire after Rebellion.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was a surprise. We were like, the Influence was kind of meh as champions because they didn't care to wrestle. It seems like. So we were like, okay, this makes sense for the Inspiration get it back and they become multi-time champs and it's all good in the hood. There was really no indication that they were going to leave. So.
No, absolutely not. Then we would get what do we got? We had Steve Macklin. This was the big match for Steve Macklin, his big turning point for this year, as he would defeat Chris Sabin and Jay White in a triple threat match.
Oh yeah,
he pinned Chris Sabin, I believe.
Pinned Chris Sabin, yes.
Yeah.
Taya Valkyrie defeats Deonna Purrazzo to become the AAA Reina de Reinas champion. And I don't remember if it was before or after this that Deonna would wrestle on AEW Dynamite and lose the ROH championship to Mercedes Martinez, thus ending Deonna Purrazzo's champ challenge that she was running with for the first portion of the year. Ace Austin would briefly become X Division champion. I honestly kind of forgot he held the belt this year, but he did hold it going into Best of the Super Juniors. Tomohiro Ishii would face Jonah, and then you would have your big main event, which was Josh Alexander versus Moose as the culmination to a 6-month storyline that took place on and off screen, starting at Bound for Glory the October prior, in a big moment for the company.
I mean, what a long build for what ended up is his second world title reign. The first minutes.
And also what a good way they did, or good job they did of kind of blurring the lines between if like he was leaving the company or not. He
was literally posting on like Instagram like pictures of him going back to construction.
Yeah, him going back to construction. You had him getting name dropped on AEW. There was like reports that he actually wasn't signed and was a free agent. So Impact did a very good job at making this like a compelling thing. Like, is Josh Alexander actually gone from Impact?
Right.
And is there never going to be a culmination of the story? And then he comes back, he gets the match, and he becomes champion. So again, kudos to Impact for actually delivering on it. And again, Josh Alexander's, I feel like we'll talk about it when we get to the end of this podcast, but his 2022 was pretty undeniable that he was probably the guy for Impact and one of the guys, like the best men's wrestlers of the year in any promotion with the run he had.
Yeah, 100%.
Ryan, I know you were always a big defender of the Moose and Josh Alexander storyline, so I'm sure you were happy to see that you were correct from the jump.
Yep.
I don't want to spend too much time on this because we do still have more to get to, but any thoughts on the way that they executed it at Rebellion?
I think you basically said everything. It was really good. The match was really good. I think that it just made sense. Yeah,
it made sense. It was the right time.
Yeah, and I do want to say that it wasn't just me. Angelo was also on board right away, saying like this makes sense logically, like why this was happening. And
okay,
again,
well, then Angelo,
I will say
that
for
not including it.
Yeah, I'll say this again. I said it when it happened. I felt like the biggest noise coming out of this whole Josh thing and saying this is horrible booking by Impact. Why would you do this? Were from people who just tune in to the pay-per-views and don't watch the weekly show or other shows to realize that this has been a story that like Josh's emotions getting the best of him and clouding his judgment have been like the overarching thing for several months. leading up to him finally winning the title last year at Bound for Glory. Before Moose, Josh is having all these emotions flood him. He has his family come in. He's distracted. Moose, the calculating heel, comes in, cashes in his his Call Your Shot trophy, gets the title. And then Scott, who is the booker of Impact, who storyline is Josh's like best friend who got him into wrestling, kept him into wrestling, got him into Impact, was like, hey, like, you need to be at your top if you're going to get this don't use your rematch right away. I'm not going to let you do your rematch right away because you're going to lose it. And then you're going to be mad at yourself and mad at me and mad at everybody. And I don't want you going down that path. It just like every step of the way, like it got annoying if like with some of the people that he was facing, like when they threw out Big Con as somebody instead that Josh had to face. Yeah, that was a little silly, but it made sense that was like the breaking point of Josh, that like they needed to send him home, like, and that's when like the whole tease of he's gone, he's leaving, he's going somewhere else began, was at the beginning of this year when, they were like, hey, we're going to throw another obstacle at you. It's Big Con. And he got himself straightened out. He was able to come back as as like a big return, take the title from Moose, and then just it's been forward, straight sailing, brilliant storytelling ever since.
Yeah.
Maybe the negative highlight, I mean, it was just because of injuries and stuff. We may never get the two in their primes to face each other, is Josh Alexander and Kenny Omega, when it felt like that's what we were leading to into the fall of 2021. Obviously,
that is true.
Obviously, Kenny Omega had a lot more injuries, and contractually it didn't make sense for him to, keep pushing himself with Impact. That's why they gave the title to Christian. But that's like something that, maybe would have happened in 2022 or in fall 2021 with maybe a rematch. Who knows how it would have went if Kenny Omega didn't have his serious injury. But I don't think that's something we'll ever really see while they're in their primes.
No. And it is, again, interesting to note, as we will get to in the next point here, is that there is still a working relationship to some degree between Impact and AEW, but it obviously is not to the extent that it was before, where you had Kenny Omega holding the world championship. Yeah. But I feel like that is a dream match now that was teased, that we, like you said, there's a good chance we will never get it. But who knows? We can all be hopeful that maybe someday we'll get it after. I feel like the ideal circumstances is while both guys aren't holding titles.
Yeah, true.
So, but
let's be honest, it's just gonna happen on a New Japan Strong episode.
I don't think Omega's working New Japan Strong, buddy.
That's what you think.
Yeah. So since, again, as I said, I was going to bring this up, but let's talk about Impact TV for a brief little minute here, as you guys did review most episodes of Impact this year on a weekly basis. So there were some big matches on TV this year. You had Jay White and Chris Bay's series against the Motor City Machine Guns. You had the phenomenal Chris Sabin versus Frankie Kazarian match. You had Alex Shelley versus Chris Sabin. You had Frankie Kazarian and Josh Alexander versus Aussie Open. And then to end the year, you had Josh Alexander versus Mike Bailey, which I'm sure Ryan will talk about later. But you also, again, you had big storylines play out on TV, like long-term stuff with, again, whether it was good or bad, the Chelsea and Mickie stuff, the Josh Alexander and Moose stuff. And then one big storyline that dominated this year was obviously the Honor No More saga of them trying to get jobs in Impact, and they got their contracts or whatever after they faced off with Team Impact. And then by the end of the year, the majority of them were gone. But if you guys, just looking at Impact from like an overall perspective as you watch their TV, what's your favorite thing about Impact, the weekly TV shows, and is there anything you think the company could improve upon?
I mean, to go off your point, Impact really doesn't hold back on their like weekly episodes. Like they're trying to get viewers, so they're not like just trying to save everything for the pay-per-view. And I think I definitely respect that out of Impact. Like every week is something that you want to watch. Very typically, sometimes they feel like almost as good as the Impact Plus shows. Favorite thing, it's hard to say. I mean, obviously, I love the anecdotes of Johnny Swinger. and the culmination of him and Zicky Dice in the Swingers Dungeon, since the Palace is no more. I mean, getting to see that, the Chump Challenge this year, a lot of the Johnny Swinger stuff gets me cackling. So I think that's what, helps me enjoy the Impact episodes. But obviously, a lot of the X Division matches are, some of the highlights. And even Josh Alexander, he wrestles a lot on Weekly Impact, and so did the Motor City Machine Gun. So there was just a lot of good wrestling to go around. Okay.
Is there anything you think that the company could improve upon with their weekly TV?
It's hard to say. I mean, I would love to see them get bigger venues for their weekly shows. I think that would be, exciting. They definitely got better this year than they were in 2021. Obviously, they can get crowds again and stuff.
Yeah.
It would be definitely nice to kind of. I just think back to the days of the, in Universal Studios, the Impact Zone there, where you can pan around and there was, bleachers of people, and it's just, it's unfortunate you don't get to see that. And even for the 2300 arena, there was a lot of people there, but the camera that's, you're watching on TV makes it feel like there's 20 people there.
Yeah.
So,
Ryan, what about you? Favorite things about the show, or favorite thing about the show, and anything you'd change or improve, I guess?
Favorite thing about the show is probably the amount of just the quality of matches that they put on. I think for the most part, I wouldn't say to the level of AEW, where AEW has shows that on the regular are very large, are shows that you could say were the quality of pay-per-view. And I think that's the reason that is because it's live. Whereas, if you booked a 2-hour show that was taped a month in advance, and had, that the lineup that they had, for I don't know, for this past week's episode this week's episode of AEW, if you had something stacked like that on a taped Impact show, I don't think it would be as strong, if that makes sense. I think that's the one thing that I would say they need to figure out a way to do, is to, make some of their episodes feel a little bit more impactful. Pardon the pun. The thing I really enjoyed,
and that might be more of a more recent thing too, because now it feels like a dragon. I guess like you said, December kind of does that.
Yeah.
Because I felt like early in the year, because there was a lot of Impact Plus and then pay-per-views, so they had to constantly throw new storylines in and out. So I felt like that was less true in the beginning of the year and more true now.
That's fair. I do think that the thing that they do really well is, I think their production value on their TV shows are much better than a lot of their pay-per-views and Impact Plus shows were, at least at the beginning of the year. The beginning of the year and last year and during the pandemic, or the height of the pandemic era, there were some really glaring production issues with the show, and part of it, I'm sure, had to do with cutting costs and trying to save money due to the pandemic and all that stuff. But once crowds started getting in, there were audio issues constantly on those shows. There were visual issues where just go in and out, and stuff like that. Whereas the TV, you don't get that, and I mean that's probably because it's taped and they can edit it and stuff like that. But they don't edit everything.
No, they do not.
As we've pointed out on our reviews before, on botch spots or things like that. But it doesn't matter as much. I think their production's really good. And I also think their commentary team, I don't need 4 people on a booth, and that's been my biggest argument about AEW. Is that I hate their booth style. I think Tom and Matt Raywalt are a phenomenal duo, and I think they've really increased my love for their TV. It's just having 2 guys that don't scream over top of each other, and they can relate to some of the wrestlers because they know them. And yeah.
I do agree with that. Like they finally found their duo for the commentary team that feels like that they should be there for a while.
Yeah.
Like Matt Stryker was he was higher, he's fine. You could probably find someone better, but he's fine. And then once they got rid of him, it was like, oh, what are you thinking? And then no, this is a good duo now.
Yeah. And it's a fucking major improvement from Josh Matthews.
Well, yes, 100%. Anything's an improvement over him. Okay, I think those were good answers. Good answers. The next Impact Plus show would be Under Siege, which only have 4 things highlighted here. Gisele Shaw would defeat Madison Rayne. I think this is one of her first singles matches, maybe her first singles match on an Impact Plus show. Gisele, not Madison, obviously.
Yeah.
One of many Honor No More versus Bullet Club matches that would dominate a large portion of the year for Impact. It kind of just seems like Honor No More was the team that they went to for any multi-man stuff. We had them versus Team Impact. You had them versus the Impact Originals, them versus Bullet Club, them versus a mixture of people, including I think there was one where it was them versus America's Most Wanted and Good Brothers.
Yep.
So again,
Heath
Heath,
yeah,
lots of multi-man matches for Honor No More this year.
Yeah.
The Briscoes become tag team champions in Impact. I think this is a very brief run for them.
Yes, extremely brief.
As they would beat the Violent by Design for the tag titles.
Mm-hmm.
And then Josh Alexander versus Tomohiro Ishii in Josh's first title defense, I think. Unless he because he defended against Moose on TV.
Yeah.
And then faced off against Ishii. Very good match.
Yeah.
And Ishii had a pretty good run at that point because he beat Eddie Edwards at the Supercard. And Ishii beat someone else too. So he
beat Jonah as well. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
right. So he was looking pretty strong.
Yeah, 100%. And then around this time, Ace Austin would also perform in the Best of the Super Juniors tournament, and he would have a star-making performance in Japan, and he would later go back over with Chris Bay, as the two would have a big-time run in the Super Junior Tag League at the end of the year. So just want to mention that there, though that was less in Impact in a New Japan thing, but it was Ace while he was X Division champion.
And it was acknowledged.
Yes, and it was acknowledged. I specifically mentioned the Gisele match because she started getting, more and more performances this year, but she was also a new signing.
Yeah.
And this was a big year. Again, there were a number of talents that did leave Impact, but this was also a big year for Impact adding new people to the roster. As some of these might not count. Like, I don't know if Taylor Wilde counts because she was an Impact, but then as I was doing research for this list, it said that she was, taken off the roster page when she originally took her break, and seemed to be out of her contract. And then when she returned this year, it seems like she's re-signed with the company. So I'm counting her as a new signing for this year.
Fair.
In my list, it looks like Impact signed 22 people this year. So just real quick of who we've got. We have Joe Hendry, Taya Valkyrie, Aiden Prince, Alan Angels, Alex Shelley, Bully Ray. Delirious appears to be full-time with Impact now. Gisele Shaw, Jack Price, Jai Vidal, Jason Hotch, John Schuyler, Jonathan Gresham just signed with the company at the end of 2022. Laredo Kid, Killer Kelly, Khan, Mike Bailey, Mia Yim, PCO, Shogun, Taylor Wilde, and Zicky Dice. Mia Yim is obviously gone. She's now back in WWE, but rejoined the company for, I think, at Under Siege was when she made her return and was with them through Bound for Glory. So a lot of people joined Impact this year.
You could also throw in the Briscoes for the brief few months. Yeah,
the Briscoes were there for a couple months too. And yeah, again, Alex Shelley is, he's an Impact, he's been an Impact before, but he didn't make his return until the beginning of 2022, and has since gone on to have quite the run this year, in terms of singles and tag action. Who would you guys choose as who do you think was the best signing that Impact made this year? Just choose one person. We don't need to go through the whole list again, but if you're choosing one person out of the new faces that you got in Impact this year, who do you think was the best person that they signed?
Who knows if it's the best or not? It just depends on the side of the bed I wake up on. But I will say PCO, because that was a man I really didn't pay attention to previously. I knew he had his Ring of Honor world title run, but my goodness, the crowds were hot for him. And he pretty much just throws his body at whatever is in front of him, whether it be a actual wrestler or just parts of the ring. So, I mean, yeah, he was putting on entertaining matches over and over and over again. And, you know, whether it was part of Honor No More or now with the dissolution of Honor No More, or even when he was in Honor No More, he was just getting main event singles matches against Jonah and whatnot. And he was knocking it out of the park in most of his matches. So, I mean, he was a really fun signing. I don't know if I'm still as hot if he's going to run with the world title and Impact. I don't necessarily see the path as easily anymore, but I thought it was possible if Eddie Edwards was going to dethrone Josh. I'm like, okay, maybe PCO sticks his nose in here, but he had a really good year and was a good find by Impact.
Yeah, and we now know he is with the company for at least another year, as he did sign a 1-year extension back in October, so you will still get plenty of PCO. So yeah, Ryan, what about you?
It's tough. I want to say that, like, I discount Shelly and Killer Kelly as new signings, considering Killer Kelly said that she signed in 2020 and just never debuted because of the pandemic. And
Okay.
Shelly was with the company and then had to take a step back because of his like full-time job. He couldn't travel with the company.
Yeah.
Like he was still doing indie stuff, but like he kind of like took a step away from wrestling so that he could, you know, focus on real world stuff and making that real money. I think that personally, I would say Mia Yim was probably one of the better signings, just because like her match quality that she brought was really good, and I think it elevated her stock. Just because I don't know what the plan would be, I'm tempted to say Jonathan Gresham is the best signing, solely because I think that he can be a plug and play guy for a while. He's a very notable star. I don't know if you know this, but I know that Tony Khan now knows this, that he's ranked pretty high in the PWI.
Yeah.
So that must matter. But I think that Gresham gives them some star power. And I think he could turn into it, but just because he hasn't done much since being signed, I can't say him yet.
It's a lot of potential. Yeah.
Yes. I'd say medium, for sure, in my opinion. PCO is a close second, though.
Okay. I haven't given my picks for these, but I would put Mike Bailey as the number one.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's like the shoe-in, you know, where he makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to talk about PCO.
That's true.
No, perfectly.
I forgot that he debuted in 2020 too, but like he signed end of 2021.
Correct. Yeah, but if Mia Yim had stayed longer, I definitely think she would be the one, because she was having some of her best matches in Impact, and then she went to WWE. So yeah, that would send us into Slammiversary, which saw Mike Bailey win Ultimate X and become X Division champion. Taya and Rosemary became tag champs. Moose faced off against Sami Callihan in Monsters Ball. The Good Brothers defeated the Briscoes to become tag champs once again, which would be the Briscoes' exit from the company, I believe. The Impact Originals defeated Honor No More. Jordynne Grace wins the first ever Queen of the Mountain match, which was Jordynne Grace, Tasha Steelz, Chelsea Green, Deonna Purrazzo, and Mia Yim, with Mickie James as the special guest enforcer to become Knockouts champion. And the main event was Josh Alexander versus Eric Young in a 20-minute tribute match to the past 20 years of Impact, as they would just Josh Alexander had a Kurt Angle-inspired gear on. They would hit moves of people like Samoa Joe and AJ Styles. It was a great match and a great celebration for a show that was a very good pay-per-view. And again, you did have, Ryan and Angelo mentioned earlier, but you had AJ Styles sending in a video on behalf of himself, talking about his time in TNA. You had a video from Sting. There was a good opening video package highlighting the past of TNA, and it was a nice celebration show for, again, a company that has lasted 20 years when people thought that they were going to go out of business so many different times.
Yeah. We also had the GOAT show up, Dixie Carter, announce the last member of Team Impact, which we're like, oh, it's gonna be a big name. It's Davey Richards.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Bro.
So yeah, but fun show. And I didn't really have another place to put this question, but I felt weird about not asking it. But I think that this is one that will probably be a very quick question because I feel like everybody's going to say the same thing. Who was your tag team of the year
Dixie
for
Carter,
Impact?
wait.
Oh, wait, okay. Who was your tag team of the year for Impact?
Motor City Machine Guns.
Oof. Yeah, probably Motor City Machine Guns.
Yeah, I figured that would be the way that everybody would go. And that would send us to Against All Odds, which saw Mike Bailey.
I should say though quickly because the good we don't care necessarily for the quality of product that the Good Brothers put out, but Impact was letting them basically like close out shows. Like when we went to the Philadelphia show, they were the ones that like said like goodbye, good night.
Yeah.
So that I guess close second is Good Brothers.
Okay.
I would go close second, Vincent and PCO.
Yes.
Okay. No major players for you guys?
No, not what they did in Impact. No,
I would say solely because they weren't around as much, and that was mainly because of the Cardona injury.
Yeah, right. That's true.
Like they debuted as a faction at our show, at the Philly tapings. Cardona would get injured shortly after and miss basically most of the summer, and most of the like he would return. He'd make a weird interference at the Ric Flair show that they would acknowledge on Impact TV that he attacked Josh during his Impact title match against who was it?
Jacob Fatu.
Jacob Fatu, yeah. They'd show that on Impact TV that it happened, and then we'd never see him again because again his injury, and like they've just come back, so it's just they haven't been a thing for long enough just because of the injuries.
Okay.
And who knows if they're going to be a thing much longer.
Yeah, no, I guess we'll see. Against All Odds would see Mike Bailey defeat Trey Miguel in what, out of all of the X Division matches I saw in 22, I thought was one of the best X Division matches of the year. It's a super strong singles match between these two. Moose versus Sammy, as their feud would continue through the summer in the Clockwork Orange House of Fun match. And Josh Alexander would defend against Joe Doring, who would eventually have to step away from in-ring competition to deal with his battle with cancer once again, unfortunately. But at least Joe Doring would get to hold the tag team titles this year and also got to main event a event against Josh Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we wish the best for Joe Doring, but I think the run-up was pretty good for him. He got, this world title match, and he was pretty protected overall in Impact. Like that was the whole idea too. He was going to face Josh Alexander because he's never been pinned in Impact. So, or at least for his current run, I think that's what they were going with.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was a good storyline, especially because Eric Young just lost that Slammiversary. You don't know where he went, so it's like, all right, let's have Joe Doring face Josh Alexander. So I thought it made sense, that match, and I thought it was a good match overall.
Okay. Then we would go to Emergence as the next Impact Plus show, and your two big matches on this one would see Mia Yim challenge Jordynne Grace for the Knockouts Championship in one of the best Knockouts matches of the year, at least up until that point, which would be overshadowed by the duo of matches from Jordynne Grace and Masha Slamovich just a bit later. And one of, personally, again, I haven't seen the Mike Bailey Josh Alexander match, but my favorite match from Impact this year, which was Josh Alexander versus Alex Shelley for the Impact World Championship. I thought these two had a blowaway match on, again, Emergence, which, no offense to the show, was it's a pretty nothing show compared to some of their other events. But those are your two big things. And again, I think it really highlighted, again, every show basically that Josh Alexander defended against. It was a notable match that the guy had, regardless of who he was defending against. And he brought out the best in every opponent he faced this year.
He really did.
Yeah. So worth mentioning. And because I mentioned the knockouts there, we're going to talk about the knockouts briefly as I ask. I'll go to Angelo first. Who were your favorite knockouts of the year? You can do... Don't do too many, but again, you can do like 1, 2, 3, whatever you want to do, or just one, whatever you want to do. It's up to you, buddy. But who are your favorite knockouts of the year?
I don't know. It's a tough choice. Hard to say. I mean, even though we didn't like what Deonna necessarily was doing, I still think she was the overall had the strongest presence, even without holding the title. I'll go with Deonna. The champ challenge was pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot that the champ challenge went as long as it did. I think that benefited her, but for the most part. So,
and even her like being able to tag with Chelsea, like kind of showed a good side of her too there.
Yeah. I would say Jordynne.
Okay.
I didn't expect her to hold the title as long as she did. As you pointed out earlier, I thought Jordynne was just going to be the person to hold the title until Masha got the best of her, and then maybe somebody else would take it from Masha to end her streak and build up a new star. But it didn't seem that way. It seems like now it's who can knock off the star that is Jordynne, because she's just elevated her game a lot, and it seems like it's going to be Mickie James, of all people, who really needs that star-making performance. Yeah. And I already said I really enjoyed Mia Yim when she was there, so yeah.
Okay. I would also go Jordynne Grace. I'm a big fan of hers, and I thought that she had a very strong 2022 from Slammiversary onward. And even before that, I don't know if you guys know this, she was the inaugural digital media champion.
Yes,
she was.
A belt that we haven't talked about because I don't really think it needs to be talked about that much.
Yeah.
No, there's not much to talk about
no.
there. Rich Swann had it for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now
Matt Cardona had it.
Oh no, Joe Hendry has it now, right?
Yeah, Joe Hendry,
the holder.
Yeah, that's why we believe in Joe Hendry.
Yeah. After Emergence, we would go to Victory Road, which was kind of a weird show. I definitely think this is probably the worst Impact special of the year.
I don't remember it.
Well, I'm getting the full card up right now, just because I forgot to write this one down.
I do want to say, when we did our Deep Six mid-year awards, I did say that Against All Odds was my favorite show of the year.
Yeah, Against All Odds
to show that like they did have a very strong showing for their premium, their live event.
100%. Impact, again, they did a lot of these Impact Plus shows and pay-per-views, but I feel like the majority of them knocked it out of the park. These were some very enjoyable shows. I think Victory Road was the exception. Let's go through this real quick. You had Taya Valkyrie defeat... Oh, this was a dark match, apparently. Oh, this was taped for the digital media thing. Taya Valkyrie versus Alicia Edwards. Okay.
Angela's favorite wrestler.
You had a jobbing match, basically, where you had Ace Austin, Chris Bay, and Juice Robinson defeat Jack Price, Jason Hotch, and Shogun. Tasha Steelz defeats Killer Kelly by DQ.
That was fucking strange.
Mike Bailey defeats Delirious. Motor City Machine Guns defeat Honor No More. Mickie James defeats Gisele Shaw, which was a good match. You had the intergender triple threat revolver match to determine the number one contender for the X Division Championship. That saw Frankie Kazarian beat Alex Zane, Black Taurus, Kenny King, Laredo Kid, Mia Yim, Trey Miguel, and Yuya Uemura. Honor No More, Eddie Edwards, Matt Taven, and Mike Bennett defeat Heath, Josh Alexander, and Rich Swann. Jordynne Grace defeats Max the Impaler, and the main event is Steve Macklin, once again winning a very big triple threat match as he defeats Moose and Sami Callihan in a three-way barbed wire massacre match. The other big thing on this show was the Impact debut of Bobby Fish,
my man,
who came out on this show, cut a bizarre promo that was making reference to the heat he had in AEW, to his controversial comments, to stuff about CM Punk, and then Raj Singh and Mahabali Shera would come out to confront him, and this was such a weird thing on this show, and it was just bad. So yeah, again, Victory Road was not a show that I think is really worth looking back on, and I think it definitely holds the thing of being like the worst Impact Plus show of the year. But it did have Mickie James versus Gisele Shaw, which was the second match in the last rodeo tour, and Steve Macklin got another very big win as he defeated Moose and Sami Callihan.
Yeah.
So two big triple threat wins for him.
Yeah, that whole feud with Sami and Macklin and Moose was very like interesting. So the dynamic was like on Moose and Macklin kind of working together. It was like kinda and they, as Moose usually does, they turn on each other. So it was a very cool, three-way feud in that sense.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something you don't often really see is like proper three-way feuds being built. It's normally between like two parties, not like three people or
Right.
three teams or whatever. So,
definitely.
And I thought all of their matches were entertaining throughout the summer. But again, and they got to main event this show, and Josh was randomly in a tag match.
Well, it was because it was to set up Josh's match
with Eddie, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, come on. There's reasons for these things happening.
Yeah. And just because we're not going to really talk about the last rodeo anywhere else, it is worth noting that Mickie James obviously is back at Impact and is currently putting her career on the line in every single match she has, basically. And her big matches that she's had were against somebody named Rachel Rose was the first match, a literal jobber to kick it off.
Mm-hmm.
Then Gisele Shaw, Mia Yim, Chelsea Green, Taylor Wilde, Deonna Purrazzo, and most recently Savannah Evans and Tasha Steelz in a tag match where it set up her versus Jordynne Grace for Hard to Kill.
Yes.
So that's that. And then that would send us into Impact's so-called biggest show of the year. And again, it was a pretty big show. You had Kazarian becoming X Division champion, which was a huge shock to everybody as he defeated Mike Bailey. Mickie James would defeat Mia Yim. The Death Dolls defeated VXT to become the tag team champions. Bully Ray would make his return to the company and win the Collier Shot Gauntlet match, defeating Steve Maclin clean as a whistle to win the match, cutting out Maclin's momentum and scoring a Impact World Championship match that could have been for Overdrive, but no, it is the long-term program that they are going with. From Bound for Glory to Hard to Kill is Bully Ray versus Josh Alexander.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah, baby.
Jordynne Grace would defeat Masha Slamovich in a great match, and Josh Alexander and Eddie Edwards would tear the house down in a 40-minute main event for the Impact World Championship. I guess the one thing I'll ask about, because again, we've talked about the majority of these people here. We haven't really, I feel like, we've mentioned Mike Bailey in passing, but we haven't really gotten to talk about him. This was obviously a shock to, I think, most people that Kazarian, of all people, was the one that dethroned him, but also the fact that they were building up the fact that that Mike Bailey was going to pass Christopher Daniels' record with the X Division title for most defenses, and then they just had him lose to Frankie Kazarian.
Because Bailey was having great matches on the weekly episodes as a workhorse, and even that match against Delirious was good that you mentioned. I mean, it was just weird in the sense that, like, Frankie Kazarian, like, what is your plan with him? And then we learned the plan was that he was going to do option C, which, we discussed on the podcast. It felt kind of silly to ruin Bailey's momentum just to do an option C when Josh Alexander was giving title matches out to anyone that asked.
Yeah, and especially because you had Bobby Fish in the Collier Shot Gauntlet, and he lost the match and then showed up on the next episode of Impact asking for a title shot, and he got one. You could have done the same thing with Frankie.
Yeah, well, it's because Frankie Kazarian didn't drop the line of the year.
Yeah, where's the lie, folks? But Ryan, what about you? What was your thoughts on Kazarian being the one to defeat Mike?
I thought it was absolutely atrocious.
I will get out of the way here and say this was a fantastic match.
Yes,
it was
100%.
Yeah,
but the decision Mike Bailey basically did not recover from this until randomly getting a title shot against Josh because Bully Ray wasn't in the building.
And because Josh Alexander will give a title shot to anybody.
Well, no.
Well,
hold on, because you guys didn't watch this.
I did.
Okay. Josh threw out an open challenge, but he said that the open challenge was meant for Bully Ray so that he could get his hand, because he really wanted to get his hands on Bully Ray. And if Bully Ray didn't win, he would still get his title shot for Hard to Kill. He just really wanted to face Bully Ray. And then Bully Ray appeared on TV and was like, "Oh, I'm not actually there. I'm too busy looking at pictures of your wife." And he just pulls out his phone and he just has screenshots of Josh's wife when Bully Ray was beating him up, was threatening to pile drive her.
Yes, Bully Ray was literally just like showing the camera his phone and blurry screenshots of the match where he was pile driving his wife.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Yeah, so I'm not there. I told you, I don't lie." I'm a man of my word. I'm only gonna face you at Hard to Kill on Friday the 13th. And so then Josh looks like he's gonna leave, but Mike Bailey comes out and he's like, "Hey, like if you're still having this open challenge, I want it." And then they proceeded to have a 59-minute, 48-second match, which was fucking phenomenal. And
yeah,
then
if you haven't seen this, which I haven't, it is up on Impact's YouTube for free. So everybody should go out of their way to watch this.
Yeah, and then he proceeded to, I think the week after, have a 15-minute barn burner with Yuya Uemura. So he seems like he's getting his momentum back, but this really cut the momentum from him for several months.
Yeah, and this would be used just to get into Overdrive. So Frankie Kazarian could challenge Josh Alexander in the main event. He would not win this, and there would be an X Division tournament that was used to build up Trey Miguel once again as X Division champion, though he would turn heel, adding a new wrinkle to his character. And that show would also see Jordynne Grace versus Masha Slamovich in a very rare last knockout standing match. And Bully Ray would also turn heel at the end of the show and challenging Josh Alexander for a Impact title match that would be made for Hard to Kill, while also attempting to or teasing pile driving Josh's wife. So again, Overdrive and Victory Road, I think, were the two lesser Impact Plus shows of the year.
Yeah.
So, but again, a very strong year when you look from January, where we began at Hard to Kill, making it all the way to where we're at now at Overdrive. A very strong year for Impact, and specifically for Josh Alexander. And that brings us to our final set of questions here. I'm actually kind of shocked we made it to the end, but we did it. We got through all of these big events. So again, you guys can choose between 1 and 3, or if you just want to choose one, who were your wrestler of the year? Your guy wrestlers. We did the knockouts and the tag team. So who was your wrestler of the year, or wrestler with honorable mentions?
I'm sure that all three of us will have the same top 2. Maybe in a different order, but I would go Josh at number 1, Mike Bailey at number 2, and then number 3, I would go with Steve Maclin.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just name a 1 and 2. Well, it's the same thing. It's Josh 1, Mike Bailey 2. Those are the workhorses of this company. Yeah, hands down.
Fair enough. I would also go with Bailey and Bailey and Mr. Josh Alexander. Third, I think there was a lot of people that had good years. I would probably toss Alex Shelley up there. I thought anytime I watched him wrestle, he was just extremely good.
This was his best year as a singles wrestler that I can remember.
Agreed.
For each of you guys, what was your favorite match of the year from Impact?
Oof. I think that Slammiversary match, Eric Young versus Josh Alexander, it just paid a lot of homage to the old wrestlers. There was some BMEs going on. There was an angle slam. It was a good fun match, I think.
Okay. Ryan?
Josh Alexander versus Mike Bailey.
Okay. I already said mine was Shelley versus Josh Alexander from Emergence. And then looking ahead to 2020...
Even that match before Shelley versus Josh Alexander, there was an Impact match that was really good. Alex Shelley versus Sabin.
Yes. Yeah, to decide who got that. And then again, it wasn't Shelley, but Sabin and Frankie Kazarian a couple months before that was also very good.
Yeah, they had a good one.
And then so now we're going to look ahead briefly to 2023, as this is releasing on the last days of 2022. So looking ahead to the new year, if you guys had to choose one wrestler who you think is either going to have the best year in the company, or if you're choosing a younger person and they're going to have a breakout year from the roster, who would you choose as your breakout, or if they're going with somebody who's already established is just going to have a very strong year?
I mean, does Mike Bailey go higher than he can now? I don't know. That's the question, right?
Yeah, so I guess the question for Mike Bailey is what would define a better year for him, because he had a very strong year as X Division champion. It just kind of ended unceremoniously, and then the booking was just kind of weird with him after he lost the belt. But
how does it get better for him? And I don't necessarily see him getting a world title this year or 2023. Meaning, so I don't know. Like, how can it get better for Mike Bailey? But like, he feels like that breakout star. If he hasn't broken out yet, which we just said he's the second best wrestler in Impact, but I don't know. Mike Bailey just feels like he can keep doing better.
Okay, Ryan.
I'm gonna go with Steve Maclin.
Oh, you think he's gonna rebound?
I think Steve Maclin will be the Impact World Champion coming out of Rebellion.
Okay.
I think that.
Do you think he defeats Josh Alexander?
No,
or
he's going to defeat Bully Ray.
Okay, so
That's
okay.
very fair.
Yes, I have Bully. So Josh is going to lose to Bully Ray, and my reasoning is, why the fuck not? Josh is going to have the longest reigning world title of all time in Impact, so he can lose it to Bully Ray, and Bully Ray can do despicable things to Josh and his wife, maybe, who knows, maybe even his son. And then Steve Maclin comes back, and he is the new hero of Impact. He's the anti-hero that everybody loves, and he can get his redemption for allowing this horrible monster named Bully Ray to come into the company. And he can win. And there you go. Steve Maclin, probably the weirdest arc of all time, from going from why the fuck did we sign the worst member of the Forgotten Sons?
No, he was not the worst member. The worst member was.
I'm sorry, the lowest member of the group.
Okay.
To why is he in the X division? To why are you teaming up with Moose? To world champion Babyface.
Sure.
Or tweener, whatever we want to call him.
All right, and then the last question of this wonderful podcast is: do you guys have any bold predictions for the new year for Impact? Whether it be somebody showing up, somebody leaving the company, a new signing, somebody winning a championship, et cetera, et cetera. Anything that you think is a possibility that you would toss out as a bold prediction off the top of your head?
Besides what I just said?
Besides Bully Ray and the Maclin thing.
Oh, okay. Speedball Mike Bailey wins the world title.
Okay.
Yeah, that's bold. I'll even though I was like kind of weary on it, I think PCO finds his way into a world title match this year, 2023.
Does he win that match though?
That's what I don't know anymore. I was very confident on it a few months ago, but
you could even have him just be a transitional champion. That's
what I'm not saying he's going to have the reign like Josh Alexander is and doing barn burners weekly, but it's possible he could be having death matches weekly. Take it off Bully Ray. You need a monster to beat Bully Ray, and then
I guess you could do PCO.
Yeah, you could do let's say like from Josh to Bully to PCO to Maclin. Could happen.
That would work.
Yeah, and then you do have Moose and Sammy that you can rely on as early challengers for Maclin.
Right.
That is fair. Okay, anything else that you guys have as a possible prediction?
I don't know. We might see a long reign for Mickie James.
Yeah,
that's probably the first thing. We expect her to win at Hard to Kill.
Okay,
because her career's on the line. I mean, she's not retiring yet. She's not that old.
Yeah. And what does Jordynne gain from retiring her?
Nothing.
Well, I mean, it would be you'd retire Mickie James, but.
But no, I mean, we might get a long reign out of Mickie James. Like, I don't think she's in a hot potato the belt for no reason. No. And so, it sounded like last Impact or the Impact before, Scott D'Amore did confirm that, like, Mickey's last rodeo ends at Hard to Kill. So it's like she could win the title and then lose it, and she's not retiring because she lost the title.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that makes sense. But I do expect we're going to see a lot of Mickie James, whether we like it or not.
Okay, Ryan, anything?
I want to say that Masha Slamovich ends up retiring Mickie, just because it was between that or Killer Kelly, but we don't know when Killer Kelly comes back.
But again, to be fair to Angelo's thing, is that that Scott said that the last rodeo thing ends, so she doesn't have to retire anymore.
Right, I agree, but I think that is so that she can lose tag matches, and that doesn't signal the end. I think that once she loses the title, she's going to say that it's done.
Okay,
that's my opinion on it.
Maybe, yeah.
Again, you have the working relationships with AEW and New Japan. You've had Frankie Kazarian as basically a regular in Impact this year. Do you think you have anybody else from AEW show up in 2023?
I mean, it's possible Christopher Daniels makes his run that he kind of teased a couple years ago, and all he got out of it was beating up. I can't think of his name now, but Ace Austin's sidekick there.
Oh, Madman Fulton.
Yeah, Fulton. Yeah. He got the Fulton match, and then went nowhere. So I mean, you might see Christopher Daniels show up.
Okay, Ryan, would you say yes or no?
I'd say yes. I just don't know who. I think
Frankie Kazarian kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, the one person I can think of, and it would be real weird. I could see Matt Hardy showing up again. I don't know why, but okay. I could see, like, since the firm owns his AEW contract, like, he gets banished from AEW because the firm gets so pissed off at him, and they don't want him like getting involved with Private Party and stuff. So he just shows up for a bit in Impact just so he's still wrestling. I feel like that's something that could happen. Would it make sense? Who knows? But it's Matt Hardy.
It would give you the possibility to have a possible stare down or angle featuring Josh Alexander and Ethan Page.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing, but I feel like that would mean that Josh has to beat Bully Ray, and I still don't see that happening.
Yeah. Here's one question from me. How important is Violent by Design going to be in 2023?
Well, you mean the design?
The design, yes.
I don't think they last much longer.
Well,
yeah.
Isn't Sami Callihan joining the group?
He keeps on asking. He keeps on saying he wants to join, and then they just attack him and say no.
Okay.
Because they think that Diener's they want to follow Diener.
I feel like if Sami joins, they become a bigger deal.
Yeah. The thing is, like, do they?
But like, it's such it's just such a random group of fucking Diener, Alan Angels, and Connor from the Ascension. Yes. I can't imagine that's a group that has legs.
No, that's why I don't.
I mean, the legs are what Eric Young left, and he was killed to create this group. So
yeah,
I mean, if Joe Doran wins his battle with cancer, I could see him coming back and it makes him a little bit bigger of a deal. But yeah, like, if it's just these three, this is the weirdest faction that's supposed to be like big, and if they keep on beating Sami Callihan and they don't let Sami join, this is the weirdest. I wouldn't understand where this is going.
Yeah, I have no idea. I just maybe Alan Angels gets to do an X Division run, but like I feel like they need to do a lot of work to try and like make the group interesting and feel like actual threats.
It's hard to tell now because there's not enough base to where they don't feel like a threat yet. So, I mean, it's possible you can get them in the tag title scene. That's in some capacity, but it's just hard to know. I would expect them to be kind of players in the tag division for at least the first half of the year.
Yeah. All right. And then one other one that I wanted to mention, since I mentioned AEW, obviously the other big relationship is New Japan. If Josh Alexander does lose the championship next year and is still not champion by the summer, there is the G1 Climax for New Japan. Do you think that Josh would enter that tournament, or do you think anybody from Impact would do the G1, as you did have Ace do the Best of the Super Juniors, and then you had Ace and Chris Bay do Super Junior Tag League. So they have been entering into New Japan's tournaments lately.
Yeah. I think there are here, I'll change your question and make it this. I think Mike Bailey is in the Best of Super Juniors this year. And I think Josh is in the G1, yes.
Okay.
If it's not Josh, I would say second would be Eddie Edwards. If he doesn't have like a really good storyline at that point.
Yeah, I'd actually be down to see Eddie go over and do the G1. I think he's built for it. I think he could last.
Right.
And I feel like there's a lot of he fits in with the Japanese crowd, like his style.
Definitely.
Or PCO.
I don't think PCO could do that whole tournament, dude.
I'll have a broken collarbone after the second match.
The level they wrestle every single night of that.
Hey, if Bad Luck Fale can do it.
Bad Luck Fale wrestles matches where he gets DQ'd or goes for countouts. PCO would be diving out of the ring into the Japanese fans and landing on his neck on the apron. I don't think he could do 8 or 9 tournament matches like in succession in the span of a couple days.
That's okay. Maybe he goes in the New Japan Cup. So I can throw somebody else from Impact into another tournament.
Sure, maybe he does the New Japan Cup.
And he wins it.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else before we wrap things up?
I think I'm going to ask you a question, Mr. New Japan man. Do you think that New Japan sends anybody who hasn't already shown up in Impact over the last 2 years?
Yeah, I think you're probably going to get somebody. I think you might get some like junior guys coming over. I also think I still kind of am shocked that Goto and Yoshihashi never showed up in Impact, but I could see it happening next year.
Hey man, Naito and Sonata seemed like the more reasonable ones.
Yeah, that was kind of random, and I don't see that. I can see Goto and Yoshihashi. Okay. It feels like Naito's at the point where he's like, I don't know. I just don't see him doing Impact again.
That's fair. Was he? Oh yeah, I was going to say.
Because again, he was part of the reason that the TNA and New Japan relationship died back in 2011 when him and Yujiro Takahashi had the tag team titles and Vince Russo booked them to lose the titles without consulting New Japan.
Oh, well,
yeah, that's not nice.
So
Vince Russo doesn't have power yet.
But I don't know if he has the relationship or desire to go back to Impact after that.
That's fair.
It's part of the reason why I don't think you'll see Okada in Impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's too big of it. I'd say that, but Jay White showed up.
Yeah, I just think that probably too many bad memories.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you think they like other than? So you think that Goto?
I think Goto, Yoshihashi, and maybe a couple juniors. Also, you could see more young lions show up, like how you have Yuya Uemura there.
But are any of the young lions up for?
No, but you might have some soon.
Say maybe Gabe.
Yeah, Gabe, I guess could. Who knows?
He's up for it,
or even you could just have some of the LA Dojo guys that aren't even young lions anymore. Regardless, I think you'll have some people from New Japan showing up that weren't in Impact this year.
I wonder if they're going to do I feel like now that the world is kind of opened up more and they have these working relationships, I think this is the better time to do like the World X Cup that they did a few years ago. And then the Super X Cup, where like they did during the pandemic to try to boost like the rate, like people's interests, but like they just had a bunch of like random guys in it. And he saw someone and then was like never allowed to cash in his world title claim or his X Division title claim. But yeah, I feel like that would be a good thing to do. Like,
yeah, you could get some people from New Japan, some people from AAA, Impact, AEW, the indie scene. So yeah,
definitely.
Kenny King.
Who?
Kenny King.
He's already on your roster.
Yeah, but he's currently in CMLL. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that is going to do it. That is our full Impact in Review show for 2022. If we're still doing the podcast and we're all still alive by the end of next year, maybe we'll do another one in 2023.
Yeah, who knows?
I feel like this is a good way to just recap the year and see what it's like. So thank you for joining for us. If you listen to the show, we appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to, and expect more Impact content in the new year as it kicks off with Hard to Kill on January 13th.
Yes. Yep.
All right, I'll let you guys say goodbye since you are the Impact guys.
Right.
So that's bye for me.
Stay safe, and we'll talk to you in the new year.
Yeah, to all my juggalos and juggalettes, woot woot. Thanks for listening.